In grandMA3 version 1.5 we improved the behaviors of Stomp, and we got a new functionality as well, which is called capture. But we will talk about this in a minute. First of all, let's have a look at the Stomp behavior now. We are back in our sequence, and remember we had this cue number 4 with the relative circle running, now in red. What we want to do in cue number 5 is we want to stop this phasor running, and therefore of course we can use the Stomp function. Let's select our fixtures and we press the Stomp key on the console and we hit the position. What we can see now when we have a look at the layers here is that the relative layer is set to 0 now. So what Stomp does in this version is that we get rid of all of these steps number 2, 3, 4 and so on. We go back to step number 1 and the relative layer will be set to 0, which would be the default. That means we stop this phasor running, and Stomp only affects those layers which have these multi-step values, so our phasors running. Absolute in this case is not touched. We only touch the relative value or the relative layer and set this to 0. Another possibility to use Stomp, so when we clear this whole thing, another possibility to use Stomp is in combination with a preset directly. So we would select our fixtures again. Our circle is running at the moment, and we would press the Stomp key again and then select a position preset, for example. So like this. And you can see Stomp in combination with a preset again touches the layer with the multi-step values, so the relative layer, sets this to 0 and activates the absolute value of this position preset we selected. And we could store this in cue number 5. So like this, we store this in our sequence, and you can see the next cue is the center preset with just one absolute value. Another thing we could use directly in these presets is the Stomp functionality directly. So when we go to the edit settings with the swipeys of a position preset, you can see that we can activate Stomp here. When we do this and press the preset, an automatically Stomp will be always executed. So together with the preset, we will automatically Stomp the position in this case. So this is another possibility to create some Stomp presets you always use, and you always stop your running position, for example. But now we have a different position, or a different situation where we not only have some wobbly things, so some phasor things running on our relative layer, but this time on the absolute layer. Let's have a look at the on-PC how Stomp behaves then. So what we want to do is we clear the whole thing, we go to our stomped position, and this time we want to run a color phasor on our absolute layer. So what we should do is we should integrate those color presets. Remember, we use integrate to integrate existing color presets into a running color phasor. So we select our fixtures, we press MA3 to get integrate, and the first step should be this C green. And the next step via MA3 should be violet. That's great. And in the color, we give also a phase that it's looking a little bit nicer. So in this case, we have absolute, or the absolute layer is running our phasor. Let's store this as a next cue. And we can see that this is running absolute great on our color. Now we want to stomp this again. And of course, we could use Stomp again to stomp this color phasor. Let's see how this behaves. So we have our fixture selected. We press the Stomp key, and this time we select the color. What you can see now when we go back to step number 1 is that the absolute layer is also set to default, and the default value would be white. So this is what Stomp does at the moment. It sets the layer where we have the multi-step values directly to the default value. And we could store this, of course. What we are missing is that we have a Stomp functionality which remembers the last known absolute value. So in this case, our red, for example, we had at the beginning. But this will be room for improvement in the next versions. At the moment, Stomp sets this absolute layer to default, which would be the white color. But of course, remember, you can use Stomp in combination with a color preset and then go back to this dedicated color preset directly. A new functionality we have in this whole workflow of stopping phases, but will give us even more functionality, is a very new thing, which is called capture. And capture is really great as, or will not only help us in static situations, but as well in dynamic situations where we want to get a real snapshot of our values. Let's see how this works. So what we do is we go back into our cue number 1. You remember this was the absolute position in white, and now we want to take our fixtures and we run a relative circle around this position. This is great. To get the capture functionality, we now press the Stomp key twice. So 2 times Stomp would be capture. You can see it here in the command line. And now we hit the position, for example. What you can see now is that you get immediately a snapshot of your values. So when we have a look at the fixture sheet, you can see this, that on the absolute positions, we get a real snapshot and we could store this directly. So this is a nice way of stopping all the running things. So remember what you could do. You could also press capture please to stop everything which is running for your selected fixtures, and then get an immediate snapshot of your values. And you could store them in a queue or a preset. So that means this new capture functionality can not only help us when we have some dynamic situations to stop all the running phases immediately and take a snapshot of our values, but it can help us in static situations as well, and is even an improvement to the former known store look functionality. So all the values will get active, we get an immediate snapshot of all the different values, and we can store this in a preset or in a queue afterwards.